Parental Advisory. The following podcast contains some explicit content. So, kids, don't let your parents know you listened to this. No! From the land of Paisley Park, unpronounceable name symbols, and lyrics that offended Al Gore.
This is Minnesota Unknown.
Each episode, we'll take a deep dive into Minnesota's storied past, with a special emphasis on the surprising, the unusual, and little-known history hidden in plain sight.
I'm Josie Bergman.
I'm Alex Weston.
And I'm Hannah Norton.
And we are
Minnesota Unknown.
Well, welcome everyone to our third and final episode in what has turned into an epic series on the life and career of the one and only Prince. In our first episode, I'd recommend going back to that if you haven't heard it. We covered Prince's early life up through him heading to New York City with dreams of making it as a star. Then in our last episode, we covered him finding his way back to Minneapolis, but finding stardom nonetheless, building up a loyal local following. And we ended right after his double record, 1999, which was his fourth studio album, had become the breakout hit that he'd been looking for. It became his first top 10 record on the Billboard charts, and he is now a bona fide star. So how does he capitalize on this? Naturally, he says he needs to be an actor.
Yeah.
He wants to be, Frank Sinatra, who is both a top billing actor in Hollywood and the largest pop star of his era. He'd been scribbling furiously in these purple notebooks, and they're all curious what he's writing.
Is it a script?
And in May of 1983, he says, what we're doing next, we're going to make a movie.
Oh, no.
Yes. So at this point, he begins hosting screenings of films at his home because he's decided, I'm also a cinephile now.
Alex says this as
Yes.
Alex has just not even an hour ago asked us to have a film screening. at his
That's true.
house. Alex, are you just jealous of Prince?
Yes, clearly. So he's bought a projector and he's renting film prints of like Ingmar Bergman films and Fellini films, hoity-toity art house films. And he's showing them at his house and asking the band, like, what do you think of this? And they're like, I don't know. What are we doing? He then starts telling his manager and the people at Warner Brothers, he's like, I want you to renew my contract. And they're like, okay, we'll talk. And he's like, and a movie has to come with it. And they're like, what? He says, like, I'm not recording any more albums. I'm not touring. I'm not doing anything for anyone unless a movie's included with it. I want to make a movie.
And why do we think this is? Who's telling him he should act? It was just a thing.
Well, his only safe haven is playing and performing. And once he's successful, I think there's a very real thing that can happen with people where at a certain point, that's all he had. He has to keep putting layers upon this performance to sort of satisfy his own creative drive, but also because he's not a guy that knows how to just relax and have a fun weekend with his friends. Like, he's basically always creating something. And if you're always creating something, you need to constantly keep creating new and different things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets very boring.
At what point is he diagnosed with a manic disorder?
Never diagnosed, but always suspected.
Mm.
What's interesting is, although he's this huge star, the idea that, like, I want you to also make me a movie star, this is a big ask. So basically, he keeps firing different producers and agents until he finds someone who's like, okay, I'll get you a movie deal. At this point, he's no longer managed by Pepe Willie. I don't know who he's managed at this point, but he fires him and basically says, like, I'm going to have a manager that will get me a movie. And eventually hires a guy named Bob Cavallo. And he's now written a full script, and the script is called Dreams. And he shows it around, and everybody rejects it because by all accounts, it's horrible. One description is, quote, its mix of music, murder, suicide, jealousy, toxic relationships, domestic violence, fame, fortune, and redemption was too erratic for most potential filmmakers.
Yeah, it sounds like a bummer.
Eventually, it's rejected by the different studios. It gets to a UCLA film school graduate named Albert Magnoli, who'd only made one student film about jazz musicians, and even he rejected it. But he's interested in working with Prince because he sees something in what's going on with Prince and is like, there's something interesting here.
There's a spark there.
It's not whatever this script is, but it's good. And Cavallo is still really trying to get Prince signed with Warner Brothers again. They want to sign more records from him. They're like, your star seems to be building. This is good. We want you to produce more records. But they don't want to sign on for a movie. That just sounds insane.
Mm-hmm.
Albert Magnoli seems to be the only one that believes there could be a Prince movie.
He's like, I see the vision. I see the vision.
Yes.
Turns to his friends. I don't see
There's
the
no vision. So Cavallo, he has no deal with anything, but he offers this film school graduate $75,000 to make the film. Now, that was enough to make a feature film back then. So Albert Magnoli and Cavallo begin pitching ideas back and forth. They're like, say, ignore Prince's crazy whatever that is. What would a Prince movie look like? And they're thinking more like a traditional concert film about a day in the life of this musician, like the Beatles' Hard Day's Night. And they begin to actually get excited about this idea, and they go back and they pitch that to Warner Brothers. And unbeknownst to Prince, Warner Brothers says, okay, if you keep the budget under a certain amount, go for it. They're basically giving him a movie to keep him happy and keep making records. They don't expect the movie to do any business, but if that helps us keep this record star on our label, we'll let him do what he wants. Again, as long as it's not too expensive. This is just like a little favor.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay, a concert movie about Prince.
Sure, why not?
We can do that.
But there's got to be an assumption that this movie's at least going to make back its budget because it's Prince.
I think, they're thinking like, okay, if we keep it fairly low budget,
people are
it'll
going to
make
come
back
see
its budget.
Yeah, people are going to come see the Prince movie. He's Prince.
He's Prince, and he's a big hit. But they're not like expecting it to be
good,
a giant blockbuster. But now Magnoli, who at this point has not met Prince, has a job. He has to fly to Minneapolis, say, Prince, good news, your movie's greenlit, I'm directing it, and also convince the famously egotistical, doesn't listen to anyone Prince, your script sucks. We got a movie. Let's make it this version that I pitched. And amazingly, he eventually does. And he does it because he hangs out with Prince a lot and eventually pitches not what he'd pitched to Warner Brothers, but something that was kind of a fusion between what he was observing in Prince's actual life and elements from Prince's crazy script. Not all of it, just elements from it. And Prince is hesitant at first, but eventually, he basically says like, look, if you want a movie made, this is going to be your best shot at it. And Prince agrees. So he starts having nightly, all-night meetings with Prince where they would just write. And the two work out what Prince called an emotional biography of himself.
So loosely based on.
Yep.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Prince's demand is, it needs to be filmed in Minneapolis, and everyone needs to be a real Minneapolis musician, no actors. The studio would push back strongly on that, but at this point, it's just Magnoli, and Magnoli's like, sure. And Prince and all of his members of the Purple Family, these other bands who are all going to be in the movie, they all take acting and dance lessons, although Morris Day is kicked out of the acting lessons because he keeps screwing around and doesn't take it seriously, which... it's funny because he's both the most amusing thing in that movie, and also you totally see it because he's just a clown. And then they also rent a warehouse where they begin writing songs that will be for the soundtrack of this. So they're writing songs that will somewhat tie into this storyline that they've hatched. And this is where they also start rehearsing their dance choreography and everything. So the movie, it is a weird mix of fairly down-to-earth, semi-autobiographical movie about a young artist named The Kid in Minneapolis who lives in his parents' basement, and his father in the movie is very much based on his father in real life. The studio insisted on casting actual actors and not Minneapolis people for 3 parts, the 2 parents and then the love interest. And the love interest was going to be played by Vanity, the lead singer of Vanity 6. When she was turned over, Vanity left, and they hired a woman named Apollonia Cotero, and it became the Apollonia 6. And she was the only professional actor to have a main part in the movie.
The Vanity 6 is a much better name, no offense.
Yeah. And they had been writing all these songs, and they decided to have a concert at First Ave where they debuted the songs that are going to be on this album. And in the audience are a couple other Warner Brothers execs who are at this point, they're not there to be impressed. They're there because they're terrified. They're like, they're here to pull the plug. Because at this point,
got a hand on a big switch in the back.
There's been some changeover in management in this department at Warner Brothers, and the person who greenlit it is no longer there. And the person who now has that job is like, what the fuck are we doing? No.
Swim away.
He wanted to come out to Minneapolis to see this, but he was 100% convinced we want to recast Prince's part.
They wanted to recast Prince's part?
So like this whole thing is like Prince the movie, but they were like, oh God, this is not going to be good. So they wanted to fire Prince and replace him with John Travolta.
What?
Yes.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah. But
Have they never worked with Prince before? Do they?
They have not.
Oh, gosh.
This is a movie guy, not a record guy. And yeah.
Oh, that's what we need. John Travolta.
He's at this show, and Albert Magnoli is there still writing the script. And Prince plays a set that is the 12 songs that will become the album Purple Rain. And the crowd goes nuts. And then at the very end, he plays one last song, which is surprisingly slower and a little more contemplative than everything. It had been a very high energy show, and that energy comes grinding to a halt as you hear these chords. And it's like a trance goes over the audience. And the song, of course, well, we'll get there.
I don't know what it is, so you should probably
Albert
play it.
Magnoli says, that's it. That's the song that needs to anchor the movie. Because he'd been telling Prince, all these songs are great, but we need one song that's like the title song. And he's seeing how the audience is responding to this song, and they are just mesmerized.
Yeah.
And it's a 7-minute song and ends with a blistering guitar solo of Prince. And afterwards, the execs both are sold. They're like, okay, maybe we don't need John Travolta. They've seen this happen.
Did they have him on the line? Like, did they think they were just going to get John Travolta for this?
Apparently they had a contract with him. So yeah, I think John Travolta, this is when his career is just starting to slide down. And so John Travolta needs a hit. So
He just needs money.
So he says, I, white John Travolta,
Yes.
will star in a movie that's entire premise is basically based on
Yeah,
a man
exactly.
who wants to break out of racial stereotypes.
Right. Well, so the studio demanded that, experienced actors play his parents, and they demanded that at least one of the parents be white. They were worried the movie was too black. And so his mother in the movie is played by a white woman, and his real mother was incredibly hurt by that, understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I would
fucked
think
up.
so.
Yep.
This is where I'm talking about. Just
Yeah.
like, it's disgusting. Like, that doesn't
It
even
is.
need to be, it hardly needs to be said that that's disgusting.
It really
It's
does.
also really, really stupid.
It
Because
is.
it's like, this is the actual story, and it's clearly worked. But now you're saying like, well, it can't work, so we have to actually change the story.
Exactly.
No, this is literally how it happened, and that's how you got the superstar that you have now. So why are you trying to change it? It's crossing those barriers. So now you want to just put it back behind those barriers just because it's like, oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so this song, it closes out the set, and everyone's stunned, and Albert Magnoli goes up to him, and immediately the first thing he says to Prince, instead of, good show, whatever, he says, what is the name of that song? And Prince says, Purple Rain. And he says, can we name the movie Purple Rain? And Prince, being Prince, answered, yes, Albert, that's always been the name of the movie.
No, Prince, it hasn't.
So it was.
Hey, Prince.
And thus it shall be.
What?
Hey, buddy.
So the film
Prince
is coming
ripping
together.
off his rocker.
The album is coming together.
So just to clarify.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's a very enigmatic thing to say.
Prince is a very enigmatic man.
That's always been the name.
The way I read it is that, like, he's realizing that, like, we didn't know it yet, but something in the universe wanted the movie to be called Purple
I
Rain.
feel like Prince is saying the universe and I have always known that that's the name of the movie.
I think
glad
that is
you-
how Prince would
glad
see it.
you
Yeah.
got up.
So it films in October and November of 1983, and it's coming together in the edit suite. And Albert Magnoli calls up Prince one night and says, we need one more song. And Prince is at this point in the studio mastering this album that's already done, basically. And he's like, what do you mean one more song? And he's like, so there's a part in the movie where the kid goes for a long motorcycle ride and is thinking about all of his family drama and everything. And he had composed some music that was to go over that. It was just a kind of instrumental thing. And Albert's looking at the rough cut and he's like, we need an actual song there. It's not enough. I think the montage works emotionally, but we need a song. And Prince says, okay. And he calls him the next morning and says, okay, I got 2 songs. And
because I'm a psycho.
Because
he
he's
plays-
on drugs.
he's not, apparently.
He's
According to
having a
who,
manic
though?
Yeah, according to who?
He's absolutely manic. Yes, that's I think true.
That'll do it.
But the other thing, though, is it one of those, like, he's reverse cycling? Like, he's up all night, he's sleeping all day kind
yeah.
of thing?
He's
Because that's
totally
definitely
doing that,
possible,
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
He's like a newborn.
Yes.
He's about the size of one.
So he calls him and says, I have 2 songs. And one is one that's never been released to this day. We don't know anything about it. And the other, Prince had recorded old school, like he did his first album, all the layers, all himself.
Oh, wow.
And this is that song. It sounded a little something like this.
Maybe I'm just like my father, too bold. Maybe you're just like my mother. She's never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? This is what it sounds like when doves cry.
Oh.
So that becomes the song that is in this emotional montage in the movie. It's the only song on the album that doesn't have any of the members of the Revolution on it. The rest was recorded
were
as a
sleeping.
band.
That's so appropriate, though, for the scene, because it's him alone on the
It is him
motorcycle
alone, yeah.
thinking, and it's made by just Prince.
And apparently the version that we now all know and love is not the version that he sent. It's all the same recording, except Prince listened to it later and said it'd be better with less. And he apparently muted several tracks, including the bass line.
Okay.
So it was a rare pop single with no bass line. It's a very stripped down song in many ways, but when it's released as the single, it becomes the biggest single of Prince's entire career. Like, this last minute thing becomes his hit.
He had so much drama inside of him that he could just whip out When Doves Cry.
And so the album is released in June, and then about a month later, the movie's released. And to these executive surprise, it is a massive blockbuster. Purple Rain is basically a fictionalized version of himself, and it's a very weird and interesting film in the way that it blends complete fantasy and like sort of pretty gritty realism. This is a movie where Prince drives around on this bespoke purple motorcycle, and there's some like very dream sequence kind of things, and it's in some ways this total like rock and roll fantasy, and it's all the club scenes take place at First Ave, which he helps make famous. But then there's like these really gritty realistic parts. Like, a big part of the drama is his domestic drama with his parents, and it depicts Prince as both this superstar and also living in his parents' basement. It's a weird blend of gritty reality and rock and roll fantasy.
Hey,
it is.
sometimes you live in your parents' basement, you know?
But the thing that this movie does is it establishes not just Prince, but that there's a whole scene in Minneapolis. There's a bunch of performance sequences from The Time and several other Minneapolis bands. So you get to see more than just Prince perform. You get to see kind of this whole music scene. And it's shot and edited with all these interesting shots of the audience. And you see close-ups of the different people who are there. You know, they were as a casting process, but they weren't professional actors. They were all Minneapolis club goers.
They're like a little splash of documentary in it, would you say?
You're meant to think, if you watch it, oh, I just watched a real Prince concert.
Gotcha.
Now, of course, it's all filmed and choreographed and very carefully staged and cast, but it is going for that sort of verisimilitude. And it's actually not a bad movie. Like, it's decent. And interestingly enough, Prince, he plays a character called the Kid. That's his only name in the movie. But even this character we don't ever get too close to. And most of the movie is him being a total dick and asshole to everyone, and then kind of getting his comeuppance to the most important musicians in his band, The Revolution, Lisa Coleman and Wendy Melvoin. In the movie, they wrote a song, and the character of the Kid keeps being like, I only play my own music. I only play my own music. And then at the very end, after being a dick to everyone and getting his comeuppance, and they've all basically left him, he listens to their demo tape and then decides, okay, we'll play this. And the triumphant conclusion of the movie is they play this song and it goes down like gangbusters. And the song, of course, is Purple Rain, which in the movie is written by Wendy and Lisa. Though in real life, although Wendy and Lisa did write a couple of the songs on the album, Prince wrote Purple Rain. So it's such a weird thing where he's like,
That's interesting.
his character arc is he finally learns to play the awesome song that his bandmates wrote. It's shot like this really realistic scene, and then the sort of synth orchestra comes in and it fades out as he like walks out into the alley, and there's just like steam coming from everywhere, and he gets on his purple motorcycle, and Apollonia, the love interest, gets on the back and he drives off, and it's very dreamlike and weird, and that's
I really
the end of
want
the
to watch
movie.
this movie.
It's a
now.
good movie. So it's released, and in the summer of 1984, Prince becomes the first and to date only person to have a movie that was number one at the box office at the same time as he had a single, When Doves Cry, that was topping all of the charts at the same time as his album, Purple Rain, is topping all the album charts.
That's what they call it. Triple threat.
EGOT who?
This movie has now established Prince as not just a big star, but a superstar, possibly the star. The album, it's the best-selling album of the year. It's vastly beyond anything. All his previous 4 albums combined don't even make a dent in how much Purple Rain sold. And the movie is a massive hit. The studio execs had basically greenlit it just thinking like, okay, whatever. It's worth it to just get this guy signed to our record label. But the movie becomes one of the biggest box office hits of the years, just behind Ghostbusters. And it establishes First Ave as Minnesota's premier music venue, and it helps create this whole mythology for Minneapolis. And you start seeing articles in Rolling Stone and in the New York Times and in all sorts of national publications about the quote-unquote Minneapolis sound. And they write about Prince and The Time and the now renamed Apollonia 6, but also a bunch of other bands that had been working hard for years. This is now their moment to explode onto the national scene. Really, it is the apotheosis of Prince. Now, he had not gotten everything he wanted. He didn't write the script himself, although it was based on some of his ideas. He didn't get to direct it.
Can you even imagine?
I can, because he directed 2 movies after this, and we'll get to that. But the movie is this smash success, both critically and commercially. And another interesting thing that happens with this album is it's selling so many copies that the squarest people you could possibly imagine buy this album. And by the squarest people you can possibly imagine, I mean a young senator and his wife, Mr. Al Gore and Tipper Gore. They buy this album because they're like, we should check out this Prince fellow. They're sitting in their living room with their 11-year-old daughter, and they put on this new record. And the 4th track comes on, a little tune called Darling Nikki, and it opens with this lyric.
I knew a girl named Nikki, I guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby, masturbating with a magazine. She said, how'd you like to waste some time? And I could not resist when I saw little Nikki grind.
And Tipper Gore and Al Gore's just heads explode, and they're like, what? And this leads Tipper Gore on a crusade that will eventually lead to those Parental Advisory stickers. They tried to get basically government-mandated censorship passed through Congress, and eventually the music industry, all the big record labels, agreed to put the Parental Advisory label on as like a self-censorship thing to avoid government censorship. So we have Prince to thank for that little sticker that all of us knew meant, oh, this is good. We better
This is
buy
good music
this.
and we should buy it right now
Yeah.
and listen to it. Yeah.
Skipping forward, though, the reason I was emphasizing this movie is it is yet another sort of thing that ratchets up his stardom. And Warner Brothers then's like, oh, sign you to a 3-picture deal. And he says, only if I can write and direct the next 2 movies. So his second movie comes out in 1986, and it's called Under the Cherry Moon. And it is the weirdest, craziest movie you will ever see. Basically, here's the pitch. Imagine you're an executive and you've already approved this movie.
I'm
and
entering the
Prince
boardroom.
Prince
All right.
tells you what it's going to be.
All right, Prince, what do you got for us?
Okay, so it's not going to be a sequel to Purple Rain. It's not going to be a music film.
You mean that huge blockbuster that made us all that money?
Prince stars as a gigolo in the south of France who starts falling in love with one of his clients. Now, it's going to be shot entirely in black and white, and it's going to blend serious drama in a style of film noir with slapstick comedy in the style of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, with bringing up baby-style screwball comedy.
I see the vision.
And it's set in the present day, but shot in a very old-timey way, but all with Prince music.
I'm sold.
You're sold. Well, critics and audiences weren't. It flopped majorly. The movie's called Under the Cherry Moon, but
need to
it
see
is
it.
worth seeking out because I think it's the purest Prince that you'll ever, like, it's just, it's a mess. It's not a good movie, but it is so full of insane ideas. Like, it fails for being too full of interesting things rather than too little. Like, it is just such a weird, again, this is a guy that is all across different genres. He's defying convention. He's defying categorization.
I was going to say, did he like have a problem doing the same thing twice?
Oh, he really did. But the studio were like, okay, I know we have a 3-picture deal, but you're not getting any budget for your third film unless it's a direct sequel to Purple Rain. So in 1990, they released Graffiti Bridge, which is a direct sequel to Purple Rain, and it catches up on all the same characters, and you see where they're at now. It was not successful. It was another bomb. But luckily, although Graffiti Bridge bombed, he did have some of his biggest hits that same year because Warner Brothers was taking another creative chance on a little movie called Batman. Now, comic book movies rule the world now, but at this point, comic book movies were seen as a huge risk. They were really worried. Everyone will think of Batman as like the campy Adam West version from the 60s. Everyone was like, a superhero movie, the last few Superman movies bombed. This is such a risk. And Batman was going to be directed by Tim Burton and starring Michael Keaton, both of whom were only known for weird, dark comedies at that point.
We don't want it to be weird, so let's get Tim Burton.
Well, yeah, so it'd been approved, but by one arm of Warner Brothers, who believed in the project, but the high-up suits were really worried. So they're like, okay, we'll let you make Batman with this weirdo director and this weirdo star, only if we get our biggest recording artist to do the soundtrack.
What?
So Prince does the soundtrack to Batman. I mean, not the score. Danny Elfman does the score, and it's a classic.
We want it to be as normal as possible. Yes. Get Danny Elfman, Tim Burton, and Prince on it right away.
But yes, Prince records a bunch of songs for this album, and a whole album worth. In fact, there's more songs on the album than are in the movie. But he records a whole album of Batman-themed songs, and it's a massive hit. So that made up for Graffiti Bridge bombing. So that is Prince's movie career. Now, to back up just a little bit, back to the mid-1980s, after the phenomenal success of Purple Rain in 1984, Prince is so successful that he's able to start insulating himself more and more. He'd always been an incredibly shy dude. He was never much of a talker. He was always enigmatic to people around him, but largely because he's just very introverted and very shy. But it's around this time that he begins speaking in riddles and just being a weirdo.
As opposed to the very grounded person he's always been, where he said, that's always been the name of the movie.
Yes, but he's now able to completely insulate himself in Prince land.
Yeah.
And actually
be as weird as he wants to be.
Exactly. And actually, let's see. In 1986, he bought a bunch of land in Chanhassen, and he begins construction of a $10 million complex, which he can now afford because he's basically from this point on filthy rich for the rest of his life. He is at that point of stardom and record sales. And he begins construction on this compound that he calls Paisley Park. And it eventually totals 65,000 square feet. And it is not only Prince's private home, but it includes 4 recording studios.
That's about double James J. Hill house
Exactly.
size.
A 12,500 square foot soundstage, a video editing suite, rehearsal rooms, offices, tenant space, and an underground parking garage. Also has an outdoor basketball court and, of course, living quarters for Prince. Also, the entire 65,000 square feet is wired for sound, including the bathrooms. So if Prince is taking a crap and has a musical idea, he can just start singing it because he had tapes going 24/7. Just in case wherever he is, if he's musically inspired, he can start recording. He apparently also had hundreds of guitars and other instruments just hung up in every hallway. So like wherever Prince is, whenever, he can just start recording stuff.
Hey, so that's crazy.
It's insane, yes. I think the best person to speak on this, years later, he would ask the filmmaker Kevin Smith to shoot a documentary for him about the release of an album at Paisley Park. And Kevin Smith talked about this in a DVD release called An Evening with Kevin Smith. And I'll share a little clip from it because it is absolutely hilarious, but is also, I think, a good description of Prince. So first of all, he talks about what it's like to communicate with Prince.
And if you know anything about Prince, he's very cryptic like that. He talks about shit like, he's like, Kevin, if a big snake gives birth to a little snake, what is that little snake going to grow up to be? And I was like, a big snake? He's like, right, and that snake gives birth to a little snake. What's that snake going to grow up to be? And I said, big snake. He said, exactly, you got to know who your father is. And I'm like, I don't know what that fucking means. So I'm like, I hear you.
And here he is. He's talking about how he wants to tell Prince that he doesn't think he can do this movie. And his handler is saying that Prince won't be able to accept that. And here's what he has to say.
I was like, I can't fucking do this. He wants to shoot a documentary, but I can't make a documentary. And she's like, okay, Kevin, let me explain something to you about Prince. I've been working with Prince for many years now, and I can't go in there and tell him that you can't shoot this documentary. And I'm like, why? And she's like, because Prince doesn't comprehend things the way you and I do. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was just like, well, Prince has been living in Prince world for quite some time now. She's like, so Prince will come to us periodically and say things like, it's 3 a.m. in Minnesota. I really need a camel. Go get it. And then we try to explain to Prince, like, Prince, it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Minnesota. It's January. And you want a camel. That is not physically or psychologically possible. And Prince says, why? And I'm like, what is he, being an asshole? And she's like, no, he's not malicious when he does it. He just doesn't understand why he can't get exactly what he wants. He doesn't understand why someone can't process a simple request like a camel at 3 a.m. in Minnesota. I was like, well, you know what? That's not my problem. I was like, I can't do what he wants me to do. I'm freaked out here. I don't know what to do. And she's like, well, why don't you know what? You'd be doing me a huge favor if you go tell him that. And I was like, all right, I'll tell him. Fuck it. Somebody's got to deal with him straight. I'll go in there. I'll tell him. He'll understand. So I go in there, and he's back up on stage, and he comes back down. He's like, what's the matter? And I was like, how do you want to shoot this thing?
Setting boundaries with Prince must have been a challenge.
Yes.
Doesn't sound healthy.
No.
Are the tapes constantly recording over themselves and he's just choosing to save it?
I think so,
It's
yeah.
not that there's
It's not constantly recording, but he then would save and mix stuff. And apparently after he passed away, it was revealed that he had enough recorded material to release several albums a year for the next 100 years if they chose. So there's so much stuff that's never left the Prince vault. And in fact, Kevin Smith talks about that too, which you'll hear in this clip.
I collect my stuff, and Stephanie, who was kind of my chaperone all week, wasn't even there anymore. And I said to her before she left, I was like, this is the last day. What are we going to do? Am I cutting this thing? Is somebody else cutting it? She's like, they've been cutting it already. He used some of the footage at his show in St. Paul last night. I'm like, really? This stuff's being already cut? I was like, that's great. So you'll have a cut of the documentary done like next week. And she's like, yeah, but I wouldn't count on seeing it really. I was like, well, why? She's like, well, frankly, a lot of this stuff never sees the light of day. And I was like, what do you mean stuff never sees the light of day? She's like, I'm his producer, right? I produced 50 music videos for him. I'm like, that's awesome. Which ones? And she's like, you've never seen them. And I was like, how have I never seen them? She's like, because they're for songs you've never heard. And I was like, well, where are they? She's like, he puts them in a vault. And I was like, for what? And she's like, I don't know. I was like, when you say music videos, it's just him on stage playing? She's like, no, 50 fully produced music videos with costumes and sets and everything. She's gone, money was spent. And I was like, and they've never been seen on MTV or anything, BET, VH1? She's like, no, he just puts them in the vault. And I was like, what? Like, in case the fucking world goes up, we'll have entertainment? She's just like, that's just the way Prince is. And so I'm like, so all this time we're working on it, like nobody may ever seen it? And she's like, I don't know, can't guarantee it. I'm like, good Lord.
So Prince really does sort of disappear into Prince world. He's built his 65,000 square foot complex where he will record all of the albums from that point on. But he's still incredibly successful, and his string of hits just continues into the 90s. Now, at this point, after covering his early life and career in granular detail, from this point forward, we're going to just hit some of the more notable milestones. Mainly because after Purple Rain, Prince, the human being, really does get subsumed by Prince, the myth and legend, and it gets harder and harder to follow his personal story in as close detail. But one thing of note, in 1993, he's having serious struggles with Warner Brothers. He's locked into this long-term contract. He was the highest paid musician in history at that point. But he's angry at them because they won't allow him to release as many albums as he wants. He's basically, by this point, constantly recording. And by all accounts, he's just this workaholic that even when he's alone, he's recording things on his own. He's just always recording.
Why, you're only saying he's a workaholic because he wired his entire home and put an instrument in every room so he could always be working.
So he wants to release all this stuff. He's basically recording thousands and thousands of hours of music every year. And Warner Brothers is like, you can release one album a year. That's it. Because we have to promote it. We got to film music videos. We have to get it on radio. There's a process. And he's really mad about this. So at this point, he says, I'm going to make a big announcement. And he calls a press conference. And he shows up at this press conference with the word slave written on his face.
Like you do.
And then says, I am now changing my name. And he holds up what his new name would be, which is what fans would come to call the love symbol. But it's an unpronounceable symbol. It's a combination of the male symbol and female symbol, though he also has hired a graphic artist to sort of curve part of it and add a little trumpet flair so that he could copyright it, because he first checked and just a simple male-female combination, like, you couldn't trademark that. So it's a distinct Prince symbol. And he mails out to all the different press floppy disks, which was a thing. This is before the internet, really, with a custom image of the symbol. And basically everyone in the media starts calling him the artist formerly known as Prince, or simply the artist. But the whole reason he's doing this is he was under the sincere impression that if I change my name, I can release as many albums as I want under my new name, and Warner Brothers can't stop me.
Did he have no legal consultation?
He had no legal consultation, and very quickly his lawyers did tell him he can't do that. And as hard as it is to communicate to Prince... He had this whole
press conference without talking to the lawyers? Yep. Okay.
So that didn't work out the way Prince wanted it to. But
in the words of Prince,
he was the artist formerly known as Prince for several years, until in 2000 he stopped using the love symbol as his name, because that's when his contract he was under then expired. And from that point on, he released all of his music on his own, and he released as much as he wanted. And he becomes one of the first artists to release things digitally. He releases things on the internet as early as 2001.
He would love digital media. He can just pump stuff out literally whenever he wants.
Exactly.
Get this boy a SoundCloud.
Now, again, I'm not going exhaustively through every bit of his life in these final couple decades, but something worth mentioning is he had been romantically linked with many women over the years. Most of them were pretty tight-lipped about their experiences, though the common thread is that most of them said, like, yeah, he wasn't there for me much. Like, he's busy recording and doing Prince stuff all the time. But he'd been romantically linked to, among others, Kim Basinger, Madonna, Sheila E., Vanity, Jill Jones, Carmen Electra, Susanna Melvoin, Wendy's sister, Ophelia Winter, and Sherilyn Fenn.
And did these women know that his house was completely tapped for audio and they were being recorded at all times? Or?
Presumably. Some of them, this would have been before that point, but yeah. And then in 1990... he saw a 16-year-old dancer outside his bus tour named Maite Garcia, and he said to one of his bandmates, "That's my future wife," which is a super creepy thing to say about a 16-year-old. In fact, it's a creepy thing to say about anyone, but
not an uncommon thing to hear at Bible colleges.
Apparently, no. Garcia later gets hired as one of his backup singers and dancers, and they married on February 14th, 1996, when he was 37 and she was 22.
Oh, boy.
According to Garcia, she and Prince had a son named Amir, who was born on October 16th, 1996. And tragically, Amir died 1 week later due to Pfeiffer syndrome. And distress of losing the child and Garcia's subsequent miscarriage apparently took a huge toll on their marriage. and they divorced in 2000. She apparently has a book out there, and I did not track down a copy of that before recording this, so I don't know much else about their relationship. Apparently, she was under all sorts of non-disclosure agreements, and getting her book released took quite a lot of legal battle, but there's more to that story out there. In 2001, Prince married Manuela Testoloni, a Canadian businesswoman of Italian and Egyptian descent, in a private ceremony, and they separated in 2005 and filed for divorce in 2006. So that's the relationships with Prince. Now, one of the other significant events in Prince's life is in 2001, he is baptized as a Jehovah's Witness. Now, as we mentioned last time, he has been a very religious man his entire life. He grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist church, and his faith was incredibly important to him throughout his entire career. But he actually gets converted to Jehovah's Witness by Larry Graham, who is the legendary bassist of the pioneering funk band Sly and the Family Stone. Prince talked about it in several interviews. He said this was not a conversion, but a realization. And he compared Larry Graham to Morpheus and Neo in The Matrix.
Oh, good.
And he started attending meetings at the local Kingdom Hall. And as you do when you're a Jehovah's Witness, he knocked on people's doors to discuss his faith. I found a Star Tribune article that interviewed someone who had Larry Graham and Prince knock on her door in Eden Prairie in 2003. And she said, quote, "My first thought is, cool. He wants to use my house as a set. I'm glad. Demolish the whole thing. Start over."
Demolish the whole thing. Start over.
I don't know.
Honestly, iconic.
Yes. Then they started on this Jehovah's Witness stuff. I said, you know what? You've just walked into a Jewish household, and this is not something I'm interested in. He says, "Can I just finish?" Then the other guy, Larry Graham, gets out his little Bible and starts reading scriptures about how the Jewish people are wrong in the land of Israel. And she kicks him out at that point. So that's one encounter
Do you think
with
Prince understood that?
I'm not sure.
I think that might have been the only person to ever set a boundary with Prince.
Now, the other notable thing is Prince, for most of his musical career, was pushing the boundaries of sexually explicit lyrics. His whole stage persona was incredibly sexual. He had this very libertine, hedonistic part of his image, but he kind of turns his back on all that when he becomes Jehovah's Witness. Again, it's not that he found religion, but he found a new specific type of a religion that he decided no more of that. So he becomes very against swearing. He becomes very against any sexually explicit stuff. He becomes this
Prince.
very chaste figure that you mentioned, your conception of Prince. That's the post-2001 Prince. So he's turning a new leaf. And this causes some tension around the 20th anniversary of Purple Rain. They're discussing a Purple Rain reunion tour where he's going to get the 1984 lineup from the Revolution back together, including his former bandmates, Wendy Melvoin and Lisa Coleman, who were really the most influential musical collaborators of Prince's career. So they're all excited, but Prince says to them, basically, I want everyone to convert to Jehovah's Witness.
What?
And he says, and Wendy and Lisa, you have to give up your sinful lifestyle. Referring to their homosexuality. And they're like, no. So that doesn't happen.
What year was this?
This is 2004. And
What a
she
crazy
gave an
turn.
interview saying she would never work with Prince again. She said both the fact that she's Jewish and gay, she's offended by everything Prince has recently been saying on those fronts.
It's very irreconcilable differences.
Although apparently they did reconcile, and several times in the late 2000s, they did play together in public performances. She never spoke publicly about how they reconciled, so it's not clear if
the second person to set boundaries with
It's
Prince.
not clear if he changed his position or if they just kind of agreed to disagree on some things, but they did apparently reconcile. But again, this was new for Prince because although he'd always been very religious, he had formerly been very supporting of the LGBT community, and he'd been seen by many as kind of a queer icon. Even though he himself was not queer, his whole persona was very gender-bending. It was very gender-fluid. He was seen by many as this kind of icon of gender fluidity. And so when he starts condemning homosexuality in public and things, many saw that as kind of a betrayal of who they thought Prince was.
Some whiplash going on.
Some whiplash.
How could you not?
But he's still cranking out albums, most of them released on the internet. And one of his most notable songs near the end of his career is a song called Baltimore, which he released in May 2015. Now, this was following the murder by police of an African-American man named Freddie Gray, and there were subsequent riots in Baltimore. This was kind of as the Black Lives Matter movement is really getting going. And Prince had often recorded political songs, but this was one of his only times that he's directly addressing something that's like ripped from the headlines in the moment. And it is a protest song, and he holds a tribute concert for Gray at Paisley Park called the Dance Rally 4-Piece, and he encouraged fans to wear the color gray in honor of Freddie Gray. And what's notable about the song is it was continuing to push musical boundaries. His big innovation on this, he recorded a bunch of fully improvised guitar solos, but then had that transcribed out to a score played by the orchestra. What? So in the finished song, there's an orchestra playing his improvised guitar solo. And it's just really cool. And it makes you wonder, what more would this guy have come up with if he had kept producing music? But that was one of the last major releases in his lifetime, because tragically, on April 21st, 2016, at 9:43 a.m., the Carver County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call requesting an ambulance be sent to Prince's home at Paisley Park. And the caller initially told the dispatcher that an unidentified person at the home was unconscious, and moments later said he was dead, and finally identified the person as Prince. And he was found, in fact, dead in an elevator in his Paisley Park compound. And it's later learned that he had died of a fentanyl overdose. A particularly ironic death for someone who his entire career had publicly shunned drugs. But in the subsequent investigation, it became known that for years he had had an opioid addiction. And it started because he had severe pain in his knees, some suspected from all of the crazy high heels he wears. But he had knee pain that was treated, and he had surgery, and he was placed on opioids after that, and apparently became addicted, and apparently had a doctor that was prescribing him hydrocodone and paracetamol pills that had been laced with counterfeit fentanyl. And that's eventually what he died from. So an incredibly tragic end, and particularly ironic, again, given his kind of straight edge
Jehovah's Witness of it all.
Living, yeah. And there is just, as I'm sure most of you remember, a global outpouring of grief, but also just celebration of this man and his music. Bridges are lit up purple all around the world. And in Minneapolis, right outside First Ave, there is several days long this street party of dancing to Prince music. And it was a whole thing, but he left quite a legacy. He'd released 40 studio albums in his lifetime. And in the weeks following his death in April of 2016, 19 different Prince albums were charting on the Billboard 200 at the same time. And he became the first and only artist ever to have 5 albums in the top 10 simultaneously, because basically after his death, everyone was buying Prince albums again. So an incredible way to go out. As Prince himself once wrote, life is just a party and parties weren't meant to last. So that is where we will end things today. The incredible, remarkable career of Prince Rogers Nelson. Now, we had originally teased the idea of doing a Prince episode followed by an episode on the Minneapolis Sound. What we thought would be one episode ended up turning into 2 episodes, which ended up turning into 3 episodes. We are going to come back to the broader phenomenon that was the Minneapolis Sound, but at a later date. In case there are some people out there worried that this has just become a Prince podcast, we're going to tackle something completely different next episode. What is it? You will have to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this to find out. So be sure you do that. And if you stay subscribed, of course, at some point we will come back to the Minneapolis Sound. But until then, let's close with a little snippet from one of Prince's lesser-known songs. This was a B-side released on a single in 1995, but I think it just ties together everything we've been talking about.
Rock and roll is alive. It lives in Minneapolis. Sing! Rock and roll is alive. Rock and roll is alive. It lives in Minneapolis. Sing! Rock and roll is alive.
So yes, Prince may no longer be with us, at least in his physical corporeal form, but to this day, rock and roll is alive, and it lives in Minneapolis.
And that's it for this episode. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into Minnesota's storied past. You can find detailed show notes for this and all episodes at minnesotaunknown.com/podcast. We'll post a link there to each episode along with features such as accompanying images, links to more info, and lists of sources cited. If you have questions, comments, corrections, complaints, or compliments, please email us at info@minnesotaunknown.com. We'd truly love to hear from you, unless it's mean, and then I'll cry. You can find Minnesota Unknown wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss an episode. And if you have a moment to rate and review, that would really help others find us. We also give history walking tours around the Twin Cities. To learn more about our current and upcoming tours, head to minnesotaunknown.com. Minnesota Unknown is produced, hosted, written, and researched by Hannah Norton, Josie Bergman, and Alex Weston. Our theme song is by Union Shakedown. This episode is copyright 2026 by Minnesota Unknown, LLC. All rights reserved.
The lyrics allude to things like oral sex, threesomes, incest.
Alex, are you going to let your children listen to this episode? Oh, my goodness.
They got to learn someday.
And the best way
is from my father's podcast about Prince.
Coworkers.
I just want the record to state we made it about 1 minute into recording.
Sorry, I know my
Before
limits.
we lost the thread.
But it was a really good minute.
It was a good minute.